And you're listening to Newstalk's Lunchtime Live with Andrea Gilligan. Well, of course, there's lots of you getting in touch with us here on the programme today about the idea of the UN encouraging us to go a little bit more vegetarian. Gina says, on the issue of the UN, instead of being panicked and screaming that everyone should go veggie, perhaps it'd be more beneficial to get everybody to buy more sustainably produced food farmed in as biodiversity a way as possible. Monoculture crops destroying biodiversity is a huge problem. There's balance in everything. James in Cork says he's currently making the transition to a vegetarian diet and purely for environmental reasons. There's many different studies from across the world saying that this is the single biggest thing an individual can do to protect our environment, which is under huge pressure from human activities. Sandra's also on the line. Sandra, thanks for joining us here in Lunchtime Live today. You are a director of Go Vegan. What do you think about the UN suggestions today?
Well, Go Vegan World is an animal rights organisation, so we believe that other animals share our right not to be used as resources and killed. So obviously as part of that we're vegan and we eat a 100% plant-based diet. So from that perspective, any time there's a recommendation for the public to eat a plant-based diet is always positive in our view. What does concern me is that this is not new. You know, we have report after report after report. The science is very, very clear that we need to transition to plant-based agriculture, and as individuals, the greatest impact that we can have on the environment to avert climate disaster and environmental collapse and loss of biodiversity is to change how we eat. My worry is that if we keep doing the same thing that we've always done, we're going to get the same results. And the results of the last few years are that the recommendations that bodies like the United Nations have been making for our targets, we're not actually meeting them. So we need to do this in a different way.
People cutting out, you know, a chicken sandwich at lunchtime on a Monday and maybe on Tuesday not eating fish, is that really going to make much of a difference, Sandra?
Well, the science is very clear. A report by the Oxford Martin Institute a few years showed that a transition to a plant-based diet would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2/3, as well as have a good impact on our health, avoid pandemics. I mean, we all know the results of that at the moment, and save human lives and save trillions in the cost of what we have to pay for illnesses. But we would say that a reduction is not enough. As vegans, obviously, we advocate that we don't use other animals at all.
Right.
But we need a very significant transition to a plant-based diet.
Okay.
And once we do that, the impact that we can have individually is absolutely tremendous.
Is it? It is that big, because that's what I'm trying to find out today, and sort of like.
Yes, yeah. Well, the science is that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2/3. Never mind all the other problems associated with animal agriculture. It's a very inefficient way of producing food. So, sorry, if you can just let me finish.
Yeah,
Andrea.
well, I'm just tight for time, so if you could just get the point.
Okay, every 100 calories that we feed to other animals, we only get 12 calories back when we eat animal foods. So it's very inefficient use of fossil fuels, of land, as well as being unethical. And I think it's really important for your listeners to know that this is really easy and enjoyable.
Well, that's what we're actually getting messages in from people today, talking about that transition, to a vegetarian or a vegan diet. I actually found out today about flexitarian. I've never even heard of that before, actually. That was new to me. Just very briefly,
well, again,
Sandra.
Andrea, I would say it's very important. We all have an ethical obligation to be accurate about this. Nobody is advocating a vegan diet or a flexitarian diet. They're advocating a plant-based diet without any animal foods, because the environmental impact of using chickens for their eggs and of the fishing industry and of the dairy industry are tremendous. We're talking about 100% plant
We'll
diet.
leave it there for today, Sandra. Thanks for joining us here on Lunchtime Live. Just briefly, Sean's also on the line. Sean, what do you make of this? Are you going to go vegetarian?
Well, thanks for having me on, Andrea. My name is Sean Owens. I'm a GP, and I'm a member of two groups. One is Plant-Based Doctors Ireland. It's not a veggie or a vegan group. It's a group that's saying we have an issue with our diet here in Ireland, and we are deficient in fibre. That means plants. And the second group I'm part of is Irish Doctors for the Environment. And the reason why we've got together is that we are on the precipice of a climate catastrophe, climate crisis, climate emergency. And, if you really think about it, it's Brexit and COVID are the only games in town in terms of the media. But just think about this. By 2030, there will be no summer ice in the Arctic. And that's really game over. There's no coming back from that. So we will come back to this issue of diet and flying and how we get to work in our car time and time again, because this is really our generation's quandary to figure out of all of the emissions in the atmosphere that were put there by man. And about half were put up there since 1980, and that's the year I was born. So I feel like I have an ethical responsibility to at least acknowledge the problem and do what you can.
Okay.
So if you go into any little carbon footprint calculator, it'll ask you about 5 things. And this addresses your question is, will skipping the chicken sandwich make a difference? It asks you how you get to work, where you live, how often you fly, and what you eat. And what people don't look at is the upstream effects and footprint of that chicken sandwich that's on a counter. The water footprint, the antibiotic footprint, about 2/3 of the antibiotics we use are in animal agriculture.
Where can people get that, Sean? Where can people get that guide that you're talking about?
Oh, there's any amount of online courses. So, for example, the Happy Pair have an online course.
Okay, I get what you mean. Okay.
But we'll come back to it time and time again, but it is important, is what I would say.
Yeah, all right.
And it's not a concession. It's not a concession.
Sean, thanks for joining us here on Lunchtime Live this afternoon.